Hello everyone. So I've been playing a bit of Codevein this week, and I thought I'd put together a little guide just running over the basics of abilities, weapons, combat, upgrades, gifts, and blood codes. Just for new players who might be a little bit confused by the terminology. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to explain is how to level up within this game. Throughout the game you'll find these little nodes called missiles, which effectively act as bonfires if anyone is familiar with the Dark Souls series. At the missile you'll notice the option here to level up. Unlike other RPGs and like Dark Souls, you don't have any options in how to customize how you level up. You simply just progress to the next level and your stats change accordingly. You level up by spending something called haze, which is effectively currency within this game. You use it to purchase new items, upgrade your weapons, level up, and of course acquire new gifts. I'll run through what these mean later on. Haze is obtained by killing enemies, and you also find some items that give you haze as well. The next thing I'll go over is something called Bloodcodes, which effectively act as classes within this game and dictate how you play. By pressing start and going to this middle square here, you can see all of the available Bloodcodes that you have access to. You'll notice as I scroll through that the core stats of your character change depending on the Bloodcode that you have equipped. So each Bloodcode effectively acts as a different playstyle. Bloodcodes determine your maximum HP, your defense, your Ichor, which is basically mana, and also the types of weapon that you can equip. And this is determined by the stats that you see at the bottom left of the screen, starting with strength and going down to fortitude. These represent the scaling that pair up with your weapon. If you want to play with weapons that have high strength rating, then you want to choose a blood code that also has a high strength rating, such as the Prometheus that you can see here, or the Atlas. You can quickly change between playstyles simply by selecting a different blood code, and it can be done at any time when you're not in combat. The next thing I'll explain is something called gifts, which basically act as the abilities within this game or spells that you can cast. Gifts are assigned to these 8 slots here and pair up with your blood code. By selecting an empty square, you can see the available gifts that you have access to assign. So let's just choose a few here. You acquire new gifts as you progress through the game, and also by finding some rare items which you then bring to this girl here in the home base. They are called vestiges and you find them throughout the map. The other way to acquire new gifts is by going to a missile and choosing Acquire Inherit Gifts. When you select this, you'll be brought to the page that shows you all of the available blood codes that we saw on the previous screen. When you select one, you'll see the gifts that are associated to that blood code. If they have a star above them, this means that they've been mastered. If they have a little bar underneath, this shows you the progress towards mastery. Once you've mastered a gift, it can then be used on any blood code. If they're flashing, it means they can be purchased. So once you've mastered your gifts, you can then change blood code and still equip the gift that was associated to that blood code. So basically, to build your perfect loadout and playstyle, you should change your blood code regularly, see what gifts are available, and if you like them, then purchase them, master them, and then change back to your main blood code and bring that gift over with you. It's a little bit complex, but once you understand it's quite simple. You'll also notice these 4 squares here, and these are basically passive abilities. They operate exactly like gifts, you can acquire them from different blood codes, and once they've been mastered they can be transferred across to the blood code of your choice. I must say though that some blood codes cannot have certain abilities, because they are associated to specific weapons. So for example, if I go over to the Ranger blood code, I won't be able to perform these gifts, because these gifts require strong, heavy weapons which can't be equipped on the Ranger blood code. Moving on to weapons, by pressing start you can see the 2 currently assigned weapons that you have here. Now I'm currently playing as the Atlas playstyle, which has a very high strength rating. Therefore, I want to make sure that I choose a weapon that also has a high strength rating. By scrolling through here, you can see where it says required stats, They are the minimum required stats from your blood code for you to be able to equip this weapon. So you can see the Assassin's Sickle and the Hanamakuro Venom can't be equipped because I don't have the required dexterity. But I can equip very heavy weapons like the Juggernaut Sledgehammer and the Hammer of Thaldrum. By having strong strength stats, it means they scale well, and I'll gain physical bonus from equipping this weapon. This final square here represents the armour that you currently have equipped. But in this game, armour means more than just armour. It's also the type of drain weapon that you can use during combat, which I'll explain a little bit more of in a second. Similar to weapons, they also have scaling. You can upgrade your weapons and armour at any time by speaking to this lady here in the home base. Like the Dark Souls series, when you upgrade a weapon, it simply gains a +1 to the weapon's name, as you can see at the top there. By scrolling through, it will show you what that weapon will gain from being upgraded. To upgrade weapons, you need Haze, as I mentioned before, which is the currency gained from killing enemies, and also Queen's Iron, or Queen's Steel, or Queen's Titanium, which you can obtain throughout the maps. Depending on the higher level that you want to upgrade to, will depend on the type of Queen's Metal that you require. You can also imbue your weapons with an elemental type.
Which weapon do you want to transform?
This requires a specific type of item that again you can find throughout the map or from trading with NPCs. Blood Veils operate in the exact same way as weapons and are upgraded in the same way. The last thing I'll go over before we go into combat is trading with NPCs, which I mentioned earlier.
Hey.
If you speak to any of the NPCs in your home base, you'll see this option here to exchange. By clicking on exchange, you'll see receive items and give valuables. When you click on receive items, you'll see all of the available items that you can gain from this NPC by giving them valuables. Each time you give them a valuable, you'll gain trading points, and once you have a certain amount, you can redeem a specific item. As you can see here, once I have 50 trading points, I can redeem the Oni Blade. These are specific weapons that you can only gain from trading with this NPC. When you play throughout the game, you'll collect valuables, which you'll see here when you go onto the trading option with an NPC. Different items give you different trading points depending on who you're talking to. There's a brilliant guide over on the Codevein Wikipedia if you want to make sure that you're getting maximum trading points from the items that you currently have. This is something I've just thrown in because I think it gets overlooked and you can gain some really useful items from it. Finally, I'm going to go into combat and just run through the basics. So, as I've mentioned before, anyone who's played the Dark Souls series will be familiar with the concepts of combat within this game, as it's largely the same. You press right stick to lock onto your enemies, and this centres them in the screen and allows you to strafe around. You have a couple of methods of attack. The first one is X, which is your light attack, and can be chained together, and the next one is Y, which is your heavy attack, which is obviously a lot slower but does more damage. You can also charge your heavy attack by holding Y. The next type of attack you have are your RB attacks, so RB and X, and RB and Y. And finally, there's your drain attack, which you do by holding A. You can also combo this after you've performed the light attack by pressing RB and A. When you perform a drain attack, you'll gain Ichor. Ichor is effectively the mana that you use to cast your abilities, and is represented by the number you can see at the bottom right of my screen there that says 13 out of 13. Each time you perform a drain attack, that number will increase, and will stay that way until you rest at a missile, and then will reset back to the default of your blood code. Another way to perform a drain attack is by getting up behind your enemy and pressing X. I can't do it on this dummy here, but similar to the Dark Souls backstab ability, you'll perform a heavy attack and gain a large amount of Ichor. The last way that you can perform a drain attack is by effectively performing a parry. By holding the left trigger, your character will flash white. This time that you flash white is your parry window. If you take damage during this time, you will parry your opponent's attack, avoid taking any damage, do a large heavy attack to your opponent, often leaving them on the floor, and you will also gain a large amount of ichor. Being able to effectively parry is key to combat within this game. The time that your character responds to the parry button press and also your parry window will depend on the type of weapon that you have equipped. Larger weapons have a slower parry window, while smaller, lighter weapons respond quicker to you pressing the button. Obviously this is difficult for me to represent here because you can't see when I'm pressing the button. The next way you can avoid taking damage is by blocking, which is performed simply by holding the left bumper. While blocking is effective and does avoid you taking full damage, you do still take some form of chip damage, and the amount of which will depend on the type of weapon that you have equipped. Heavier weapons mean you receive less, whereas lighter weapons are less effective at blocking, so you will receive more. While blocking is useful for a quick way to avoid taking full damage and can also be used to learn your opponent's attack chains, it shouldn't be your main source of avoiding damage. That should be your dodge, which is performed by pressing B. Also, if you attack quickly after you've dodged, you can perform a dodge attack, which is often a good gap closer. While dodging, you are completely immune from damage, so this should be your main way of avoiding damage. Master dodging, and you're effectively invincible. The last thing I'll talk about is focus, which is a small bar that you can see above the red bar on the dummy there. You should be warned that enemies have it too. When you take damage, receive damage, and effectively avoid an attack, you will gain focus. Once your focus bar is full, it will allow you to perform a special attack, which is done by pressing RB and Y, and looks like this. You will knock your opponent up into the air, leave them on the floor, and perform a drain attack all at the same time. It's a really effective attack and even works on some bosses, so when you see that focus bar is full, try and get one off. Finally, I'm going to talk about gifts, which, as I mentioned before, are effectively abilities or spells that you can cast within this game. Gifts range from spells, buffs, enemy debuffs, combination attacks, or healing for your ally. I've got 8 assigned gifts here, and I'll demonstrate some of them now. So Y is a spell, B is a buff for myself where I charge my weapon with fire, but as you can see now I'm out of ichor, so I need to perform some drain attacks to get some back. I've also got some combination moves here. And finally, X is a defensive buff, which shields me from damage. I should also mention that you can quickly cycle between your assigned weapons by just pressing up on the D-pad. Every weapon has a different moveset, so it's all about finding one that works for you. Again, similar to the Dark Souls series, it's quite difficult to make the case that any weapon is the single best weapon in this game. Realistically, you can choose one of the first weapons that you have, and as long as you keep it upgraded, it will last you the whole game. So it's up to finding the weapon that works best for you with the best moveset that suits your playstyle. Well, that's the end of the guide. I hope I've made things a little bit easier for new players and you've perhaps learned something that you didn't know before, and I hope it makes the game a little bit easier for you. If you'd like to show your support for this video, then please just like it or subscribe to my channel, as I'm an up and coming YouTuber and I'm welcome to any feedback. If you have any positive or negative, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you very much guys, and stay safe.